Hi, third grade. Today I have your lesson 106 math instructional video. The theme for today is going to be evaluating expressions. And we have just one short objective again today. Evaluate expressions when given the value of the unknown variable. And when you look at the reteaching worksheet, it looks a little bit complicated, but this is actually building on something that we've already done because we have been doing expressions all year long where we have had a letter taking the place of a number, and we have had to figure out what that letter means. And it might be an N, it might be a Q, it could be a C. We've used all sorts of different numbers. We've used it in just regular equations. We have used it in word problems. The difference is today they're going to be giving us what the variable is valued at. So your worksheet for lesson 106 says evaluating expressions. It says evaluate means find a value or answer a question. And they give you some examples of expressions: n plus 8 or t minus 5 or 4r. Remember, we know that if there is a letter written right next to a number with no symbol in between, that means 4 times r. What is different about these expressions is we have seen them as equations before. So we might be used to seeing n plus 8 equals 10. And then we would have to figure out what n equals. We'd have to subtract 8 from 10. And then we would know that n equals 2 because 2 plus 8 equals 10. These are not equations this time. They're just one-sided expressions. There's no equal sign on there, but they're going to give us values to fill in and figure out what that equal part is. That's the part we're doing today. And then it says the letter in an expression is called a variable because it can mean something different in each problem. And when you know what the letter represents or its value, you can solve the problem. So they give us several examples. They give an addition problem, a subtraction problem, and a multiplication problem. I'm going to go over those on the whiteboard a little bit larger. So the first one is it says if n equals 7, then what is the value of each of these expressions? So I'm going to put right up at the top n equals 7 so I don't forget that. N equals 7. So normally we would have to figure out what n is. We don't need to do that this time. So the first one that it has is n plus 5. And we have to figure out what that equals. We know that n equals 7, so where there is an n, I am going to plug in a 7. 7 plus 5 equals 12. Then they have n minus 5, n still equals 7. 7 minus 5 equals 2. Then they have 2n. Remember, when that letter is right next to the number, that means it's a multiplication problem. So I can say 2 times 7. 2 times 7 equals 14. Now, there is one problem on your number 6 on your worksheet. There's a problem that I wanted to go over because they didn't give you an example of a division problem on here. So number 6 says, evaluate x over y using x equals 15 and y equals 3. So I'm going to write that like a fraction. Where there's an x, I'm going to put a 15, so on the top of the fraction. Where there's a y, I'm going to put a 3, so 15 over 3. Now, we just did a lesson on improper fractions, or they've also called them top-heavy fractions before. Remember, this is technically a division problem. That line in the middle, that is a fraction bar. That's a division bar in that fraction. So it's actually saying 15 divided by 3. So 15 divided by 3 would equal 5. Now I want to review some concepts, but I'm not going to actually do these examples. So number 4 has an exponent. B to the second power, or sometimes we say B squared if we're doing area. And it says when B equals 3. Remember that that exponent is not saying I'm multiplying this by 2. I'm not going to say 3 to the second power or 3 squared. It's not 3 times 2. That exponent is telling me how many times I am multiplying the base, the bottom number, by itself. So that is actually 3 times 3. Similarly, number 7 says find the value of G when G equals 64. Now remember, that is a square root symbol. And when I want to find the square root of something, I want to find out what number times itself equals that number in the square root symbol. So I want to know what number times itself will equal 64. So both of the numbers that I would be multiplying have to be the same number and then equal 64. So you can complete this on the Google Sheet in the Google Classroom, or you can upload a PDF of work completed by hand if you have the paper Learn at Home packet.